Hey all, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this video, we're going to be covering my top 15 overpowered builds in DLC. These are the builds and weapons that I've been using so far. I haven't been able to get to everything yet, but I found a lot of really great weapons I'm going to share in this video. For obvious reasons, I'm going to leave the perfumes and the thorn sorceries out of this one for the time being because I believe they will be patched. I have a feeling those are going to be hit relatively soon within the next few weeks, and they're definitely going to be nerfed given their current damage. That's just my opinion on them. If they're not nerfed within a week or so, I'll start covering them. Maybe I'll make a separate video for them. But I don't really like to have to go back to comments and stuff and change builds that are nerfed. And it seems like at this point, they're definitely going to be hit. Now, for this video, we're going to cover a lot of popular weapons like Rellana's Twinblades and a lot of fun stuff too. Now, this next one I'm going to cover, Bloodfiend's arm, can be hit, but I don't think it's going to be hit as hard. I think they're just going to lower the bleed build up on this. The charge attack, in my opinion, is meant to have extra bleed. That's the point. It's just a little bit broken right now. And, of course, this is a really good build, so we're going to cover that one weapon-wise. This is top 15, and we're going to jump in here at number 15 with the Horn Warrior Swords. Alright, so these were just outside my top 15. I honestly didn't really want to include these because I think they're really good. They're not as overpowered as some of the other ones on this list, especially the top 10, but I find these really convenient. I love the Ash of War. It's spammable, it's holy damage, it's easy to use, and then the jump attacks and successive hits do good physical damage too. Yeah, so ultimately my love for this weapon is the reason it made this list. I've been using these a lot. If you're ever having trouble with mobs, by the way, this honestly rivals the Blasphemous Blade in terms of mods. Typically, if there's a group of them, you'll be able to spam this Ash of War. Maybe 5 of them will go down literally with one use of the Ash of War. It's pretty incredible. It's great for clearing out mobs and pretty good on bosses too. Yeah, this is one I highly recommend grabbing. By the way, I'm keeping this video pretty spoiler-free. We're going to be bringing all these weapons back to the lands between. Let's jump into equipment. We have the Horn Warrior Sword plus 10. We're using the Erdtree seal. We have 51 poise. We have the Shard of Alexander, a Sacred Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Melissa's Prosthesis, and then we have the Holy tier and the Faith tier as well. Let's jump into stats for this one. Alright, the stats on this build, we have 55 Faith. The Faith is typically for the weapon art, which is going to scale with your Faith stats. Holy damage, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 26 Endurance, 15 Strength, and then for the weapon damage itself, the physical component, we have 50 Dexterity. And of course, for our buffs, we're going to be using Golden Vow and Hellish Shabriri, which will boost that weapon art's damage by around 40%. It's pretty great. And at number 14, we have Smithscript Cirque, which is my favorite of the throwing weapons so far, at least the ones I've tried out. And if you put these in Blood Affinity and then you use the charge attacks, you get really good damage, good amount of bleed buildup, and honestly, they're a pretty great throwing weapon on the charge attacks. I ended up going with the Ash of War Bloodblade too, which at the end can do a lot of damage, but mainly the advantage here is that you're able to throw them for a good amount of bleed buildup and physical damage. I really like them as throwing weapons. I've tried a lot of the throwing weapons out so far. It's like the martial arts stuff. It's pretty cool because it's relatively new. By the way, I want to mention real quick for the comment section in this video, within a week or two, probably next weekend or the weekend after, I'm going to be doing some shout outs for some of the best comments that I've had on my channel. I've never really done that before, so if you want to add anything in the comment section, some of the comments, whatnot, I've saved, and I'm going to do a little bit of a comment highlight for the channel coming up soon. Yeah, never really done that before. I've actually saved some comments that were really great on my channel. I have them screenshot. And then, of course, I'm going to look through for some other great ones and do some shout-outs. That should be really fun. In a second here, we're going to go over the build stats and equipment for this one. All right, now for equipment on this build, we're going to jump in right now. And we have the Blood Smithscript Cirque, plus 24 with Bloodblade. Any seal for buffs, we hit 51 poise. Shard of Alexander, Smithing Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Axe Talisman. We have the Spike Crack tier, and then the Faith tier for buffs. Also, a huge thank you to everybody that's been supporting this channel. You guys are absolutely amazing. You made this channel happen. The comments, everything. The community we built has been fantastic. Be sure to join the Discord too. It's in the pinned comment below. We have 60 Vigor for this one, 40 Dexterity, 45 Arcane for the soft cap for bleed buildup, and Golden Vow and Flame Grant Strength. And at number 13, we have the Flowerstone Gavel. I like this weapon. Now, this isn't as overpowered. Again, the first couple here are just powerful. I'd put them into, and then the top 10, we're going to get into some of the stuff that I think is definitely more broken. But for this, it's chargeable, it's lightning damage, it's really easy to use, and it has really good range too. Also, in terms of Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree and build content, soon, this upcoming week, I'm going to start implementing some of the early game DLC stuff, maybe even mid-game DLC stuff. I've kept spoilers out to this point, but we're going to get to a point eventually where I'm going to have to include the bosses and stuff, and that is coming up soon. Yeah, trust me, I'm really trying to keep spoilers out because I know people are just hopping on gradually, and not all of us have several hours a day to put into a game. Some of us are playing 2 hours at a time. For equipment, we have the Flowerstone Gavel plus 10 preferably, any seal for buffs, we hit 51 poise. We have the Shard of Alexander, Lightning Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Godfrey Icon. This is chargeable, Lightning tier, as well as the Faith tier too. And for stats on this one, this is actually a strength and arcane build. If you pump arcane up even higher, you'll get a lot of damage out of the lightning because the lightning will scale with your arcane stat. We have 45 arcane, 25 faith with the faith tier, 15 dexterity, 40 strength, 25 endurance, 20 mind, 60 vigor. Now, if you have enough faith, Howl of Shabriri is definitely the better buff here, and then you're going to go with Golden Vow. All right, the next one up here is one of my favorites on this list, and that's Rellana's Twinblades. These are so much fun to use. Now, it's better, especially if you're at 150, rune level 150, to build around one. For this, I built around the faith and the fire part. If you're at a high level, obviously, you can do it all, but here we've built around the faith and fire part, and man, these swords are a lot of fun to use. If you haven't picked these swords up, they're from the first boss in the DLC. Again, we're not going to talk too much about spoilers here. Rellana's Twinblades, preferably plus 10. Any seal for buffs, we hit 51 poise. We have the Shard of Alexander, Fire Scorpion Charm, Rellana's Cameo. Definitely should have that one for this one. Listen's Prosthesis, Flame tier, and Faith tier too. And for stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 26 Endurance. We have 20 Strength. We have 35 Dexterity here. We have 55 Faith with a Faith here to really build around that fire part and make the most of it. If you want to build around the beams, you would invest in Intelligence. For our buffs, we're going to be using Golden Vow for the 15% attack and defense, and Flame Grant Me Strength. And the next one up here, number 11, is, again, one of my favorites on this list too, and that is the Ancient Meteoric or Greatsword. That's a lot of words for one weapon, but man, this one is really cool. It does magic damage, has a follow-up explosion, and on top of all that, it does a lot of posture damage too. Yeah, on the list for cool weapons, this would definitely be top 3 for me. I love this one. This is really cool. You get the charge attack and then that follow-up explosion. They both do good damage, by the way, too. This is one of those ones that's going to be really reliable for you. And yes, this is another strength and arcane build, and the magic damage scales minimally with arcane. Not too much there. It's mainly based on weapon level and your strength stat. Yeah, one I recommend trying out for sure. The Meteoric or Greatsword is awesome. This is one you're definitely going to want to pick up, and I believe you can get this one pretty early in the DLC. We have it at plus 9, plus 10 preferably. Any seal for buffs, we hit 51 poise, of course. We have the Shard of Alexander, Magic Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Arsenal Charm plus 1, and then we have the Magic tier and Faith tier so we can use buffs again. Alright, so for stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 25 Endurance. We have 40 Strength, which is 60 when we're two-handing this. We have 15 Dexterity, 25 Faith with the Faith tier. We have 45 Arcane to hit that first really good damage soft cap. And keep in mind, the higher you can get your Strength level, the more damage you'll get out of it. And of course, the magic damage will scale a little bit with your Arcane stats. So if you want to pump that up even higher at higher levels, you'll get more damage. We're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength for this awesome build. Man, I love some of these DLC weapons. At number 10, we have the Lizard's Greatsword in Cold Affinity. We actually have the Ash of War, which is the same Ash of War that's on Death's Poker with this, and it builds up a lot of frost damage, and then you get a charge attack that has an extra projectile that does more damage. It has a projectile that comes out of the charge attacks, and you'll get more damage and a good amount of posture damage too. We even get a nice poise break in there too. That was pretty great. And of course, a lot of frost build up as well. Now, as far as the journey, by the way, we are on Journey 2 New Game Plus. And eventually I'll get back to the New Game Plus 7 characters on Xbox. But for the time being, I've been on PC. I now have a third character I'm working on. So almost 3. 2, now almost 3 characters. We have the Cold Lizard's Greatsword with Ghost Flame Call. Any seal for buffs. We hit 51 poise. And then we have the Shard of Alexander to boost the weapon art, Magic Scorpion Charm for magic damage, Ritual Sword Talisman if you're at full HP, Axe Talisman for charge attacks, and the Magic tier for magic damage, of course, Faith tier for buffs. Let's jump into stats. And for stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 27 Endurance, 15 Strength, we have 25 Dexterity, 55 Intelligence to make use of that weapon art, which is going to scale entirely with Intelligence, 25 Faith with the Faith tier, Golden Vow, and Flame Grant Me Strength. And at number 9, we have the Barbed Staff Spear. I did this as a shield poke build, essentially. We are using a powerful Great Shield here to block, and it has a 77 guard boost, I believe. And then we're going to be using the Barbed Staff Spear's Ash of War to take advantage of that really cool weapon art. Now, technically, if you want, we have a shield poke build. I mean, you can shield poke with this, but of course, you could also block and then use that amazing weapon art, which does a massive amount of holy damage that'll scale entirely with your Fate stat. Also, since I'm not a big shield guy, in the comments below, if you want to see more shield-related builds, shield poke builds, or even want to, like, honestly share your build and let me know what you think about shield poke builds as a whole, let me know, because apparently it's becoming a popular thing, although for me personally, I'm not really a shield guy. I prefer to just use the Ash of War and roll, but of course, you can make some really powerful builds with a shield as well. Yeah, a lot of people have requested shield type builds. Now, I don't do them too often because, again, I just prefer to roll and then follow up usually with the Ash of War or a light or heavy attack. Most of the cases for me, it's a heavy attack or the Ash of War. We have the Barbed Spear plus 10. We have the Black Steel Great Shield. We hit 51 poise, any seal for buff, Shard of Alexander, Sacred Scorpion Charm. We have the Ritual Swords Talisman, Arsenal Charm plus 1 or Great Jar's Arsenal. And then we have the Holy Tier and Faith Tier 2. All right, now we're going to jump into stats for this one. We have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, we have 28 Endurance, we have 40 Strength for this one because of the shield that we have. We have 55 Faith with the Faith tier, so we get a good amount of holy damage out of the Ash of War. The rest of the stats are up to you. Now, if you're at a high level, you can pump Faith up to 80 and you'll get a ton of damage out of that weapon art. And then, of course, we're going to be using Golden Vow and Hellish Fury to buff this build. All right, at number 8, we have the Dancing Blade of Ranah. I love this one. This is one of the best new builds that I found so far, personally, because you could just hold down the Ash of War button and it builds up on so much with successive hits. It's incredible. This is a pure dexterity build that can add up to a lot of physical damage. This is one you definitely should try out. Another favorite one on this list, no question about it. We're going to jump into equipment, stats, everything you need to know. We have the Dancing Blade of Ranah, preferably plus 10. We have any seal for buffs. We hit 51 poise. We have the Wing Sword Insignia, Shard of Alexander, Ritual Swords Talisman, Melissen's Prosthesis. Then we have the Thorny tier and Faith tier 2. Yeah, you're not going to get bleed buildup on this weapon, but you are going to get a lot of physical damage. It really is a very good weapon to try out. We have 75 Dexterity with Melissen's Prosthesis, 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 28 Endurance, 25 Faith with the Faith tier, and for our buffs, we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Strength. And next one here, we have one of the best bonk new weapons in the game, and that is number 7, the Anvil Hammer. This one is incredible, honestly. The Ash of War does a lot of posture damage. There's a little bit of a strength and faith build, but leans more towards strength, and then you get great posture damage out of the charged attacks too. And this isn't Bloodfiend's arm good. Now, it's not going to have that absurd amount of bleed buildup because you're not getting bleed buildup here, but the amount of physical damage you're getting with the Anvil Hammer does make it overpowered in my opinion. It's really good for that. High AR, a lot of damage, and great charge attacks too. Yeah, I've been using this weapon more and more, and honestly, especially for like mobs and stuff, you can absolutely just smash through a lot of the stuff in the game with the Anvil Hammer. I mean, that's the point, I guess. That's what it's meant for, but it does a great job of it. So if you're a strength user, you do not want to miss out on the Anvil Hammer. This is one you absolutely want to have a build for, no question. As far as the faith requirements and how it scales, you're going to need those pretty much to use the buffs you like to use, or at least I like to use anyway, Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. So invest a little bit, 20, 30 points into faith, and then the rest into strength, and this weapon won't let you down. For equipment, we have the Anvil Hammer, preferably plus 10. We have any seal for buffs. We hit 51 poise, of course. We have the Shard of Alexander, Axe Talisman for charged attacks. Ritual Sword Talisman, Two-Handed Sword Talisman goes well with this. Spike Crack tier and Faith tier 2. And now for our stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, 21 Mind, we have 33 Endurance. You're going to need a good amount of Endurance for this one. We have 40 Strength, which gives us 60 when we're two-handing this. Now, for this, I went for 50 Faith because I was doing a couple different builds, but typically you only need around 20, 30, probably about 30 Faith. And then for our buffs, we're going to be using Golden Vow and Hellish Fury to boost the damage. The next one we have up here at number 6 is Milady. I love this weapon. This is a great weapon. It's actually a great sword, but it's literally one of the light great swords, and honestly, it is great. And we've added Stormblade to it with that additional new talisman, and we're able to get a lot of damage out of the Ash of War, along with a really cool moveset too. Yeah, this is one you're going to want to pick up, no question about it. Milady is an excellent weapon. It's a really cool greatsword with a lot of versatility in that light greatsword class. You could use a lot of cool different Ashes of War with it. For this, we chose Stormblade because it's excellent on it. We're going to jump into equipment and stats now. And for equipment on this one, we have Quality Milady. We're actually using this as a quality build. We have any seal for buffs. We have 51 poise. We have the new talisman, the Enraged Divide Beast. We have Shard of Alexander, Ritual Swords Talisman, Melissen's Prosthesis, Green Burst Crystal tier, and Faith tier 2. And for stats on this one, we ran this as a quality build. We have 40 strength, that's 60 strength when we're two-handing this. We have 50 dexterity. We also have 15 faith, but 25 faith with the faith tier. 28 endurance, 23 mind. We have 60 vigor. By the way, I recommend 60 Vigor for taking on anything in the DLC, regardless of new game cycle, by the way. It's pretty much mandatory for most players. It's going to help you a lot having that. We're using Golden Vow and Flame Grip Strength. And at number 5, we have the Great Katana, another personal favorite. I guess there's a lot of favorites on this list, and this is another one you can grab really early with the overhead stance ability. It will hit 3 times on the charged version of the Ash of War. The light attack is just a single hit, and the charged hits here can build up on successive hits, of course, and a lot of bleed build up and physical damage. I recommend heavy affinity for this with Bloodfiend Blade because what's going to happen here is you're going to get 95 bleed buildup anyway. You get the two-handed bonus on any of your regular hits or anything like that. And then, of course, strength and dexterity on the Great Katana are both a B scaling anyway. So strength for me was the better way to go. No matter what you do, though, check out the Great Katana. Don't miss out on this weapon. This is one of those weapons in the DLC you're going to want to try out because the Great Katana class is excellent to begin with. It improves upon the Katana class with more AR, more bleed build-up, and whatnot. And, of course, the Great Katana, for me so far, has been the best one, too. In a second here, we're going to go over equipment, stats, everything you need to know for this build. And for equipment, we have the Heavy Great Katana plus 25 with Bloodfiend Blade. Of course, we're using any seal for buffs. We hit 51 poise. We have the Winged Sword Insignia, Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Maleficent's Prosthesis, Thorny Tier, and Faith Tier 2. By the way, Rotten Winged Sword Insignia is the better way to go if you have it. I just don't have it yet on New Game Plus. That is definitely a better one than Winged Sword Insignia. So if you have it, use that and Maleficent's Prosthesis. We have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 20 Endurance, 70 Strength, 20 Dexterity, 25 Faith with the Faith Tier, 10 Arcane for Bloodfiend Blade. Of course, we mentioned we are using Bloodfiend Blade for the additional 40 bleed buildup, and then our other buffs are going to be Golden Vow and Flame Grip Me Strength for this build. All right, the next one is the one that we covered yesterday, and that is the Kung Fu build. This is an amazing build that uses the awesome dry leaf weapon arts. They're really cool, by the way, especially the kick that can build up on successive attacks, and we have it blood affinity to build up on bleed build up too. Yeah, the Kung Fu stuff in Elden Ring turned out to be really good. I ended up enjoying it. If you haven't seen my video from yesterday, I'm going to leave that in the description below. That's a full showcase for it, taking on several of the game's tough bosses, the main game, base game anyways. And yeah, it's amazing. The kick does a lot of damage. It does a lot of bleed build up, and then you get so many hits with it that it builds up on successive attacks too to add on to that. If you're looking for a build that's both good and pure fun, now this isn't my favorite. I left my favorite for the last one, and I'll explain where it lands into the ranking. It's kind of an extra build that's on here, but this is definitely my second favorite one, and for pure fun, this is truly amazing, and it's also powerful too. It has that kind of perfect combination between fun and power. Yeah, certainly a recommendation for me, no question about it. I love this one. I love the kicking one especially. Now, the hand fighting one for me, I'm not as big of a fan of. I don't think that does as much damage. That one's chargeable. I think you use the Godfrey icon with it. I did test it out some this past week, but I enjoy the kicking better, and personally for me, I get more damage with the kicks. You could even say I get a kick out of it, but yeah, it is so much fun using this stuff. Having the martial arts in Elden Ring was not something I ever expected them to add to the game, and they exceeded our expectations with Shadow of the Erdtree. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree was excellent. It truly has been amazing. Let's jump into equipment and stats for this one. For equipment, we have Dane's Blood Footwork, of course, and then we have any seal for buffs. We hit 51 poise, over 51 poise. Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Shard of Alexander. We have the Shattered Stone Talisman, a new one. Maleficent's Prosthesis, Thorny Tier, and then we're using the Faith Tier for buffs. And to jump in on stats for this one, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 25 Endurance, 35 Strength, we have 25 Dexterity. It's very much a quality build in Blood Affinity, by the way. They have the same amount of point return per point when you're using this in Blood Affinity. We have 25 Faith with the Faith Tier, 45 Arcane for the Bleed Soft Cap. We're using Golden Vow and Flame Grip Me Strength. And next up here at number 3, we have the Backhand Blades. I love this weapon. They are phenomenal. They do a lot of bleed build-up. Again, you can get bleed build-up really quickly. And then the Ash of War is essentially a free dodge button, which is awesome. If you're like me and you're not the best at dodging, it could actually save you at times simply by hitting the Ash of War button. Yeah, and then, of course, having those really quick hits, those quick attacks, and the fact that you can get this one pretty much right from the start of the DLC. It's one of those weapons that it's actually kind of hard to miss. I think it's meant to be there to help you early on and to show you what the DLC has to offer, because the Ash of War is incredible. Put it in Blood Affinity, get a ton of damage. By the way, if you've hung to this point to the top 3, don't forget to hit the sub button, but also comment below your favorite weapon so far in DLC. And I know it's probably going to be the perfume bottles and the thorn sorceries and whatnot. That stuff is going to get nerfed, though. Don't be surprised if it does within the next few weeks. But really, what is your favorite weapons in DLC so far? What do you like most? All right, for equipment, we have the Blood Backhand Blades, plus 25 preferably. Any seal for buffs, we did hit 51 poise. We have the Shard of Alexander, Wingsword Insignia, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Melissa's Prosthesis. We have the Thorny tier, Faith tier. And then we're using Market Shackle to stun the boss. That's an item, by the way. We have 60 Vigor, 19 Mind, 26 Endurance. We have 15 Strength, 45 Dexterity for that initial soft cap, 45 Arcane, 25 Faith with the Faith tier. And then, of course, we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grip Strength to buff this amazing build. If you haven't tried out the Backhand Blades yet, they're one of my favorite DLC weapons. They're really amazing. Try this one out for sure. All right, now jumping to our top 2. Before I talk about my favorite one and where that lands on this list, we have the Beast Claws, an amazing weapon for physical damage and for bleed build up too. Of course, they are absolutely ridiculous. The Ash of War is insane Savage Claws, and if you haven't tried this one out, you should try this one out for a ton of bleed build up. This one is super powerful. Now let's jump into equipment. We have the Heavy Beast Claws plus 25. We are using Bloodflame Blade, of course, any seal for buffs. We hit well over 51 boys here. Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Shard of Alexander, Wingsword Insignia, or Rotten Wingsword Insignia, Melissa's Prosthesis, Authority tier, Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. And now for the stats on the Beast Claws build that we're going to jump into right now. We have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 25 Endurance. We have 75 Strength for this build because we have a Heavy Affinity. We have 20 Dexterity, 25 Faith with the Faith tier, 10 Arcane for Bloodflame Blade. And then we're going to be using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength for this one, or Hellish Brewery. Either one's good. This is an amazing build. Definitely try this one out for a lot of damage. And next up here at number 1, we have Bloodfiend's Arm. This is an incredible build, does a lot of bleed build up. This one could possibly get nerfed a little bit, but I imagine it's still going to be pretty good because I think the point of the charge attacks on this one is to get extra bleed build up, and it goes well with Savage Lion's Claw too. Yeah, this is one you got to for sure try, no question about it. If you're looking for a strength and arcane build, Bloodfiend's Arm may very well be the best there is in the DLC, at least so far. That charged attack right there has additional blood splatter and bleed build up. It's an amazing weapon. Check this one out if you want to do a lot of physical damage and an insane amount of bleed build up. Let's jump into equipment and stats. For equipment, we have Bloodfiend's Arm and Blood Affinity. We have Savage Lion's Claw. We're using any seal for buffs. We hit 51 poise. We have the Shard of Alexander, of course. We have the Two-Handed Sword Talisman, Axe Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation. We have the Spike Crack tier, Faith tier, and we're using Market Shackle there as well. And for stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, 18 Mind, 28 Endurance. We have 40 Strength. That gives us 60 Strength when we were two-handing this. 45 Arcane, 25 Faith with the Faith tier, Golden Vow, and Flame Grant Me Strength. All right, now let's jump into my favorite one. What is my favorite one so far in all of Elden Ring's DLC? What's the one I have had the most fun with? Honestly, the Kung Fu stuff is right there. It's right next to this one, but my favorite so far as somebody who loves faith builds is Messmer's Spear, Spear of the Impaler. There's a full showcase for this one in the description below, and as far as where this would land, it's not quite in my top 5, but it does make it in my top 10. Alright, for this we have Spear of the Impaler plus 10. We're using the Erdtree seal. You can hit 51 poise, by the way, with this amount of endurance for this build. We have the Fire Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman. We have the Melissa's Prosthesis Talisman, Shard of Alexander for the weapon art. We have the Flame tier for fire damage, Faith tier as well. Let's jump into stats for this one. And for stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, we have 26 Endurance, we have 15 Strength, we have 50 Dexterity with Melissa's Prosthesis, 55 Faith, by the way, with the Faith tier. This weapon's pretty split. The physical damage is Dexterity, the fire damage is from your Faith stat. Amazing one to try out, by the way. I recommend this one for sure. I love the Spear. I think it has an incredibly fun Ash of War. You also have a throwing attack on your charge hits as well. For our buffs on this one, we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. Thanks for watching this one. Thanks for tuning in to my top 15 builds so far in DLC. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree has been amazing. I love making builds for this. It has been a ton of fun. Definitely sub for more fun content and good Elden Ring builds. And don't forget, I'm going to be highlighting some comments soon. So if there's something you want to say in the comment section. But yeah, there's going to be a comment section coming up soon where I'm going to highlight some of my favorite comments, do some shout outs and whatnot. Looking forward to that. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.